Okay, welcome everybody. We are on our Monday Mastermind group and very excited to talk about a topic. The second habit about being very high performing is generating energy. I think that's something everybody really wants to be able to do. It's so uncool and so discouraging to be in this situation in life when you don't have energy and you're feeling down or discouraged. Or so generating energy and knowing how to do that habitually so that we can perform highly is just really, really important. So it was quite interesting to know that this was one of the successful habits of high performing people. But as we get into it, it makes a lot of sense. So in this chapter, in this section of the book, Brendan Borchardt starts off with interviewing the CEO, who's really, really successful, but he's totally burnt out and he's just doesn't feel happy anymore. He's lost his energy and he doesn't really want to let anybody know that. So he's actually flew Brendan Borchardt over for an interview and they're sitting together at 3:30 in the morning. Can you believe it? Apparently, high achieving people only let go of their guard after midnight. Anyway, they are sitting and he's telling Brendan, look, I need help. I've kind of made choices. And he says to Brendan, and so Brendan says to him, well, look, what do you want me to do? Tell you to play mother and tell you have more sleep. And he laughs and he says, no, you've got to help me find my happiness, my energy again. So he says, well, you do realize your mind and body didn't let you down, that it's the choices that you're making. And I guess you already know that. Kind of answers him and says there has to be a way of crushing it and still being happy. So there has to be a way of being a really high performer and still keeping your energy and being happy. And interestingly enough, his wife actually bought him a bracelet at one of Brendan Borchardt's workshops, and this man was wearing this bracelet all the time, and what it said on the bracelet was bring the joy. So that was obviously really important to him. Okay, so if you look at energy, what William Blake says about energy, I like this quote: energy is eternal delight. I think that's really cool. As you might expect, it takes a lot of energy to succeed over the long term, but it's a key force that helps you perform better in any areas of your life. It's why high performers have so much more passion, stamina, and motivation. If you can put the capital E, energy, if you can find that, not from external sources, but from within yourself. Okay, so Anne, who's not with us tonight, Anne is from Zimbabwe, and often the internet isn't very helpful at this time of the evening. But I've been through these questions, and she went through these questions and felt really discouraged. So I'm going to get each of you to go through this question on a scale of 1 to 5, okay? I guess 1 being not very much energy and 5 being lots of energy. Just being very honest, answer these questions. Okay, number 1. I have the mental stamina to be present and focused throughout the day. So 1 is, that's not very true of you. 5, that is very true of you. I have the mental stamina to be present and focused throughout the day. Where are you on 1 to 5 in that?
Okay. Can you please repeat?
Yeah, sure. I have the mental stamina, so like your mind concentration, etc., your emotional kind of energy, to be present focused throughout the day. So as you go throughout the day, do you find that you kind of have constant energy and focus? Or do you find like maybe you have intermittent energy and focus? Or do you find like you're actually not in a good space and you have very little energy and focus? So if you have to sort of rate yourself between 1 and 5. Hello, Andre. You've just jumped in at a point where I'm asking people to rate themselves on this question as to whether this is very true of you or not very true of you. 1 being not very true and 5 being it is very true. I have the mental stamina to be present and focused throughout the day. So 1 would be, no, you don't really have that much mental energy. And 5 being, yeah, you're pretty focused and lots of energy throughout the day. Okay, moving on to number 2. I have the physical energy I need to achieve my goals every day. So if you think of what your goals are in the day, do you find like you have the energy to achieve them all, or you start off like really energetic and you flag, or you're one of the slow starters and by the end of the day the engine's running full speed ahead? So yeah, what would you rate yourself? I have the physical energy I need to achieve my goals every day. Okay, and then between 1 and 5, in general, I feel cheerful and optimistic.
What does that exactly mean?
Cheerful, like you're happy, optimistic, like you feel like things are going to be okay. You think they're going to turn out well. It's kind of like you have a glass half full as opposed to a glass half empty.
Okay.
Okay, now for these 3 questions, you've got to kind of turn the rating around. So the first question is, my mind feels slow and foggy. So you'd have to say 5 for your mind feeling slow and foggy and 1 for your mind not feeling slow and foggy. And this is on a normal day, not when you've been out drinking the night before. Okay, and then the next one, I'm physically exhausted too often.
Physically exhausted.
So 5 would be you are, and 1 would be you're not. Okay, I feel a lot of negative energy and emotions. Okay, I probably got the scoring all wrong, but I think you guys have a relatively good idea of where you're sitting in the whole spectrum of energy from those 5 questions. So when energy is used in this book, it's not so much just a physical energy, it's the whole spectrum. It's mental, emotional, physical, and for quite a few of us, spiritual. And he says, so the headline from our research in this topic may seem pretty obvious, that high performers have a high amount of energy. But he says, and low energy correlates with low performance. But he says what's quite interesting is what high energy also correlates with. So high energy also correlates with overall happiness, enthusiasm when you take up challenges, success, your personal success as being your focus, as opposed to the focus being on your opposition's success. And then how you do in the kind of the face of adversity, and how much influence you actually have with others. I think people really want to hang out with people with lots of energy, as opposed to feeling like you've got to support somebody else's energy to move from A to B. And interestingly enough, it'll also determine how well you eat and how well you sleep. He kind of carries on. He says, high energy is also positively related to educational attainment, to creativity and assertiveness. This tends to mean that you have the more energy someone has, the more likely they are to pursue higher levels of education, to come up with creative ideas at work, and to speak up for themselves and take actions towards their dreams. That's why he says organizations and academic institutions worldwide should actually get very serious about developing employee and student energy scores, high student energy scores. And then I was quite interested by this, actually. He said that when they looked at which roles in life, which sort of professional roles, which people in these roles had the highest energy or were the highest performers with highest energy, they were CEOs and senior executives, which I found quite interesting. And then I was even more surprised when he said CEOs and senior executives have energy equivalent to that of a professional athlete. It's quite amazing. So it turns out that CEOs have about as much energy as a NFL quarterback. It seems quite an amazing find, actually. So bottom line, the more energy someone has, the more likely they are to be happy and climb to the top of their primary field of interest. It turns out then he carries on, there's some interesting facts about being married or single. So that might work well for you or might not work well for you. So he says, it turns out that marriage is good for your energy, just as it's good for longevity. In our surveys, married people have more energy than their never married counterparts. So he says, go ahead and tell fearful friends that believe that marriage will make you dull, tired, or moody, that just doesn't hold up. I guess it does depend on what kind of relationship you have in the marriage, but overall, marriage is a good thing.
So can I ask?
Sure.
So why do people end up divorcing?
Whoa, that's a big question. To answer that in the most simple of ways, I would say, I suppose some people would get divorced because there's a high level of abuse in the marriage. But I think a lot of people don't do the hard work that is needed to stay committed, and the hard work that's necessary in your own personal development before you leave a marriage. That's a bit of a simple answer to a big question.
So as we're reading this about energy, yeah. I believe maybe we're not putting the same energy in a marriage. Maybe someone is putting less energy than the other. That's why we end up not having we're having a divorce and stuff.
Sure. I agree. Some people are more committed than other people, or making more of an effort, you're saying. True. I spoke to somebody who does my website, and he's recently got divorced, but he said to me that he emotionally left the marriage long before he actually physically left the marriage. I agree. Yeah. Okay, so almost all modern health research confirms the importance of our well-being, which is something we often don't pay too much attention to, our well-being. So often it depends. It depends on who you are as a character, I guess, or personality, but many of us focus a lot on everybody else's well-being as opposed to our own well-being. Well, sometimes the flip side of that is that we want other people to take care of us instead of we taking care of ourselves. So it's something that not a lot of people take seriously, their own well-being. So he then moves on to talk about stress as being the ultimate energy killer, the ultimate energy and well-being killer. And he goes into a whole kind of physiological explanation, which you might all find fascinating, probably especially you, Bonky. So it says with stress, it shows the production of new brain cells, which reduces serotonin and dopamine, which are critical to your mood, and fires up your amygdala, which simultaneously decreases your hippocampus function. I'm not sure if anybody knew anything about what that meant, but it basically says to me, when you're stressed, a lot of things don't work as they should.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay? So you become a bit of a frazzled person and your memory goes as well. I know one situation where I was feeling really, really stressed many years ago, and I totally drove through a red traffic light. It was horrific. I mean, I could have killed somebody. I could have been killed. I was just, I think that's what stress does to us. Totally shuts down our mind to a certain extent. Okay. But he says there's good news. So he says the good news is you can dramatically increase your energy and overall performance with just a few simple practices. Your energy is not a fixed mental, physical, emotional state. And again, so that brings a lot of hope. So like anything in your life, any other set of skills you can develop, you can also develop the practice of having high energy. So he has 3 practices that can increase your energy levels. And I must say, I read this afternoon and started having fun practicing it. I'll just kind of read it for you because I think it says it so much better in the book here. So the first one is release tension and set intention. Very interestingly says, well, there's quite a nice quote here by Socrates. It says, human excellence is a state of mind. And Borchardt goes on to say, in a decade of coaching high performers, I found that the easiest, fastest, and most effective way to help them increase their energy is to teach them how to master transition. So transition, any idea what that word is in line with what we're talking about?
How to navigate from where you are, where you want to be, high level.
Okay, so you're talking about more general, like being low performing to being high performing, that kind of transition. Okay, he's actually quite a little bit more detailed and daily about it. So he says any transition. So like when you wake up in the morning to starting your day, that's a transition. It's a transition from when you drive to work and you actually get to work, that's a transition. If you been at work and you go home, that's a transition. If you're focusing on emails and now you're going to focus on doing a PowerPoint presentation, that's a transition. If you're doing emails and then you're focusing on an interview, or you're going to do some gardening, or you're going to make a meal, that's a transition. So he says it's in these transitions. It's a very powerful space. That transition is a very powerful space. And that you can create a freedom between activities. And it's in that space between transitions that you can generate resources and amplify your energy, which is quite interesting. So maybe just write down, based on that description, write down what are some of the regular transitions in your life. You know, you can kind of carry on with that. But do a couple of you want to just mention some transitions, just as an example? No. Okay. So the ones I've put up is like waking up to and making a cup of tea, to spending time with God and doing something more on a spiritual level. That's kind of a transition. And from that to then going walking on the beach, that's a transition. Coming off the beach, getting into some work, that's a transition. So just as some way of giving an example. And then he says, let me ask you a couple of questions about these transitions. Do you ever carry any negative energy from one activity to the other? Do you ever find yourself that one thing that you don't particularly like doing, kind of, it could be the example like, you know, somebody who's really busy at work and then they come home and they take their work attitude into the home, for example. And then maybe a more relevant one. Do you ever feel depleted but still plow into your next activity without a break, even though you know you should take a break? I think we could probably all put our hands up to that. I definitely could. And then, are you losing a sense of presence and appreciation for life and for others the further you go into your day? So the further you go into your day and the busier you get, do you feel more and more disconnected with yourself, more disconnected with people that matter to you? He says, I'm convinced if we can get you to change the way you shift from one activity to the next, we can revitalize your life. So are you ready for the next experience? Okay, so this is what you need to do between activities in that transition space. First of all, close your eyes. Second of all, repeat the word release. And as you repeat that word release, just let everything go. Let go of what you're thinking about, let go of the physical tension in your body, let go of whatever the circumstance is, whatever the feelings that circumstance that you're in is creating for you. Just kind of get into a space of letting go, just, releasing tension. Okay, and then the third thing, when you've done that, so it doesn't need to take a long time. I guess, as with anything, when you first start learning a new way of doing life, it takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more time. After that, it becomes a little bit more habitual. After you've done that, set an intention for the next phase. So I'll give you an example. So this is where I was having fun today, having just learned how to do this. So for example, my husband and I went shopping and then we had some coffee. So after coffee, we're now moving into space of driving in the car. So I said, okay, release. Getting into the car, and then we got into the car and chose the wrong highway. And I had to be here at 6:30 to do this webinar. So now I'm freaking out a little bit. Okay, release, release. And then getting home and kind of getting everything together and then kind of thinking, okay, what is my intention for getting into this webinar? How do I want to be in this webinar? How do I want to come across? What's important in the webinar? So yeah, just as an example, and then he says, if you really want to go to a deeper level, and I thought this might be quite a fun thing to do next week. I'll try and see if I can find it. You can go to a release meditation technique, RMT, he calls it. And apparently you can just Google his name on YouTube and put in the heading, release meditation technique. So he says it's quite helpful if somebody talks you through that. So I'll go and try and find it and see what it's like. And then maybe we could actually do that for 29 minutes next week, see what it's like. Okay. This is, regardless of how you choose to take a break, meditative or otherwise, and deal with the stress, the idea is to form a habit and stick to it. So most meditation practices can lead to significantly less stress and anxiety, causing a bump in attention, presence, creativity, and well-being. Neuroscience continues to find that people with more meditative experience show increased connectivity with the brain's attentional networks, as well as attentional regions and medial frontal regions that are critical to such cognitive skills as maintaining attention and engaging from distraction. So the positive effect of meditation, they don't just happen, but it's more when you do it as part of your life and more when you do it more continuously. And one study showed that positive effects such as decreased anxieties from just a few months of meditation can last 3 years. So you don't need to be sort of into heavy, deep meditation, but those few minutes when you just take a deep breath, close your eyes and just say, release, 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 that is kind of a meditation. Okay. So just to end off with, we're going to do a couple of performance prompts. Okay, so 1, what are the things that cause you the most amount of tension each day? Anybody like to suggest a couple of things that causes them tension in the day?
Waking up in the morning.
You're not an early riser.
Yeah.
What would be your ideal starting time for the day?
At least 8 o'clock.
At least 8 o'clock. What time do you have to get up at the moment?
Yeah. But then I have to wake up around 6.
Oh my goodness.
Wow,
2 hours earlier than what's comfortable.
Mm.
Okay, no, that is tense. So then you're gonna have to really practice that relaxing before you jump out of bed.
Yes.
Anybody else have anything that causes tension in the day?
Yeah, my husband having to drive to from work on these crazy roads.
Yeah, shame. You must be especially worrying about him at the moment with what's happened recently.
Yeah.
Shame. Yeah. I wish he could just work from home. That would be easier. Shame, Ronnie. Sorry. You must be feeling very anxious right now.
Yeah, it's been a tense few days, that's for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that my daughter-in-law actually taught me, well, after not a very pleasant experience, we were here in Sicily and we were at a beautiful water area, but it was quite a strong flowing stream, river. Yeah, it's more of a river. In certain areas, it was more strong flowing. And her son, my grandson, he's only 2 years old, he went and sat on a rock. And we were all very nearby, but without anybody being able to, I was fortunately in the water, without anybody being able to do anything in time, he just decided to slide off the rock and he went into the water and he started getting taken down the river, which was such a shock. Fortunately, I managed to get to him in time, and some other people also were there and they managed to stop him and put him back in my arms. But it was that horrible feeling like, what if I hadn't got it there in time? And that horrible feeling of my daughter-in-law seeing her son disappearing down the river, and she said, quite a good exercise, and I tried it, was try and reverse it. So go the one way, remember like your husband leaving, get in the car, here's what happens, how do you feel? And then go back the other way. So reverse it. So remember the ending. The ending was he came home safe. And the ending was he wasn't very badly hurt. And then try and reverse it. Go the other way around. So remember him being so just reverse everything, sort of as though you're playing it backwards, so that you get to that place again where he really ended up being very safe, and replay the trauma in reverse. And it was actually quite an interesting trick on your brain.
Oh, it is interesting.
It is. So, I mean, it helped me. I'm not sure how you'll find it, because I know for me, that was a once-off incident. For you, your husband's going there every day and having to let go every day and trust that he's going to be okay is really hard, when the last few days have been just not at all like that at all.
No.
Hello, Bernie. You're coming in right at the end, but it's nice that you're coming in anyway. Are you there? No, seems that Bernie might not have a thing on. Some of the things I wrote about that give me tension is not achieving my goals. And usually that is because I take on too much. So I cause my own tension for not being more focused and more strategic. And, I suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out. So I don't want to let go of anything in case it can be valuable, in case it can be important. So kind of narrowing down for me and being focused, I struggle with. So not achieving my goals, I get very frustrated and tense. Okay. Anybody else want to say what they get a bit tense about in the day?
Yeah, I reckon also not achieving, getting to deadlines. Sort of chasing one's tail and getting quite stressed, often getting caught in traffic and not making a deadline, or not making a meeting on time, or continually running behind, I think is for me very, very stressful. I always seem to be chasing my tail.
Yeah, no, it's not a cool feeling. It's like such a nice feeling if you do come to the end of the day and you've got some really significant things done that you really wanted to get done. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a very nice feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah, yeah.
Big tick.
Yeah, big tick. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just move on to the next prompt. A way I would remind myself to release that tension throughout the day is, so when you're experiencing that tension, Ronnie with your husband driving off, me and Carol with not achieving our goals, Bonky with getting up early, what are some ways you can release the tension? What can you say to yourself? What can you actually physically do? Okay. Anybody want to suggest what they would do just to relieve the tension in those transition spaces, especially when they're beginning to feel that that negativity is carrying over from one activity to another?
Slow down.
Slow down, okay. Take a few deep breaths, have a cup of coffee.
I always tell myself, just slow down, just do what you can do.
Yeah, okay.
Work out the possibilities if you don't get to what you need to do or it doesn't happen, what are the consequences? You always know the consequences of not actually achieving, often not as, well, for me, it's okay, well, I can deal with that, or, well, I'll have to deal with that.
Yeah, so it's,
Do what you can do.
okay. Okay,
Change
so
your routine.
reassess what you have done, be happy with what you have achieved.
Prioritize as well. Very important to prioritize. Often I have to prioritize and say, okay, well, I'm not going to get to X, Y, Z. And I will say, right, what is important, what can be done at a later stage, what can't.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that, Carol.
I have a suggestion for Carol.
Okay. Go for it, Bonky.
I will say each and every day you have to let your tail chase you, not you chasing your tail.
Okay,
Yeah.
how do you do
Okay.
that?
You can improve by making sure that you plan everything. Planning is a key.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what I can just say. Planning.
So more strategy and planning.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. But sometimes what actually happens is, you get caught in traffic, you're on your way somewhere, you get caught in traffic, you get behind, it's out of your control. And that's when I would say, for me, that's when the tension kicks in. It's not actually the planning and what I need to do, because one can plan and know what you can do, but it's those curveballs that come at you.
Okay, good.
The frustrations of
The frustration of the curveball. Maybe you're sitting on in queue and you plan to be somewhere at 4 o'clock, and you realize you're in a complete traffic jam, and you ain't gonna make it by 4. You'll be lucky if you make it by 5.
Yeah.
And that's when you need that release.
Yeah.
Luckily we got cell phones, so you can just phone and say, ain't happening.
Yeah. But yeah, like I say, forgive yourself. I think you had some good strategies there. Let go of what you can't do and try and prioritize with what you still can do. Any other thoughts about relieving tension?
Speak good thoughts to yourself. If you find yourself speaking negative out of frustration, then just reverse and speak good thoughts. I speak from the Bible, so yeah.
Okay, I think that's that's also a nice thing about not smashing yourself up about things, but actually seeing some of the positives in what is or isn't happening. Kind of change your perception around of a certain circumstance.
Maybe change a habit too. Not that I'm saying you can change a habit when you get stuck in traffic, but I guess it comes along the same line of changing your thought. Maybe changing a habit if something goes wrong and you continually do something the same way. Well, try to do something different, like, I don't know, read a book, take a time out, reward yourself in some way.
It's quite hard for you, I guess, because you feel a bit powerless about what's going on out there. So it's hard to have some faith and have the belief that it's all going to be okay, as opposed to it's going to happen again. But it is important that you focus on what's going to be okay, because we've learned that from doing our whole Napoleon Hill thing. And what you focus on expands. What you focus on, you kind of attract towards yourself. So sending out a positive energy is also going to be really important.
No, I agree, but it's hard when you're sending out the positive energy and the recipient is just sending out negative.
Yeah, no, that is true. You can't change anybody else.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just do what you can do. Just sending out the positive energy. Yeah, that is tough. Okay. If I felt more energy every day or each day, I would be more likely to, how would you complete that sentence? If you had more energy, how would your day be different?
Can you please repeat?
If you were practicing some of these things, energy levels, you had more energy, say, in your day tomorrow than you had in your day today. What do you think would be different in your day tomorrow?
I'd have more focus.
I would start earlier.
Okay, start earlier. Okay, you'd have more focus, Ronnie. I think one of the things is you could be more positive to people. I mean, if you feel like you've got energy, it feels a generous space when you've got energy. You can be more kind to people, more tolerant with people, possibly. Any other thoughts? Get more done, obviously, if you got more energy. Any other ideas? Okay, this is the last one. When I reset my energy each day with this practice, I'd like to start the next activity feeling. That's a nice one. So if you're moving from one activity to another and you're working in that transition space to release, to then set intention, how would you like to feel about the start of your next activity? How would you like to be feeling when you go into the next phase of your day?
Inspired.
Inspired, okay. Any other feelings?
In a sense of joy and confidence.
Inner joy and confidence, okay.
I will also need to be challenged by that thing.
Challenged. You would feel more open to a challenge.
Yes, I will need to be challenged for me to be excited.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I'd feel more free. You know, I wouldn't feel bound to what's just happened. I'll feel free to just move into the next space with no baggage, put it that way.
It's improving it.
Yeah.
It's more like improving yourself.
Sure. Not being the same person in the next activity as you might have been in the past one. Okay, so next week we're going to move on to bring the joy.
Bring the joy.
Bring the joy. Okay, I'll have a look at that meditation, see if it's going to work for us to do it on a webinar. But next week, we're going to focus on Bring the Joy. So that feels quite cool. And I have to say a very big public thank you to Ronnie. She did a beautiful picture of me smiling. There's a caricature she sent. I should see if I've got it on my phone. I can show everybody. Let's see. I'm quite good at drawing. Anyway, that was very nice and encouraging. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me see if I can find it. My phone's taking too long to just hanging. Okay, so I'm wishing everybody a really awesome week ahead. And yeah, really looking forward to hearing how this exercise works for you. Oh, have you got it? Let's have a look.
I don't know if you can see it.
Kind of bit. Yeah, pretty cool. Yeah, does that look like me?
The young you.
The young me, thank you. How do you mean, Bonky? I am young.
Yes, you are. You're young.
I am. I'll keep this surname forever.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, no, have fun playing around with this exercise, you know, being conscious of release, close your eyes, release, relax, and set the intention for the next activity. I'll be very keen to hear what you say. In fact, maybe I could end off with, I know I said it's the end, but there's a lovely, you know, the guy we started off with in the beginning. Let's see if I can read this with the light I've got. So the guy we started off with at the beginning, he was so stressed out, and Brendan Borchardt taught him this technique. He says, "Hey man, I want to thank you again for flying out. I appreciated our conversation and your time, especially under short notice. I look forward to working together. I also want to share a quick win with you. Tonight, when I pulled up to my house, I tried this release technique you taught me. I just sat in the car for a few minutes before going into the house. I closed my eyes and just repeated the word release to myself. I'm guessing I did this for about 5 minutes. Then I asked myself, how do I go into my house free from my work and business? How would I greet my wife if I was going to be the best husband in the world? How would I be with my daughter tonight if I realize how precious this time is with her in her life right now? How would I show up if I was energized within myself? I don't remember all my thoughts, but I went in with this intention and love for my wife and gave her my full energy. I walked in like a new man, as if I'd won the lottery of life. You should have prepared me for what happened next, because at first my wife thought there's something wrong. But then she realized it was just me again and what was going on. And my daughter noticed too that I'd come in a very different kind of way. And we just had the most wonderful night together. I'm at a loss how to describe it, but you gave me my family back. They're getting ready for bed now. I couldn't wait to just send you a short note to say thanks. So, pretty cool. Okay, everybody, lovely to chat and lovely to share together and grow together. Have an awesome week. And yeah, see you next week.
Thanks, Sandy.
See you next
Thanks very
week.
much.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.